What's up, guys? This is Jay and Scott from Revolution Radio. Scott, how you doing, man?
Man, I am peachy, except for the fact that they're doing lockdowns and crap again. So, you even have less places to go eat.
I don't think you need more places to go eat, though, to be honest.
I don't think I need more food.
You don't have a weight problem or anything, but like the older we get, the metabolism runs down, and no, at least we don't have to deal with that problem here. It,
Yeah, there's a lot of people locally. I mean, this has been our first. Like we were unscathed through the first kind of outbreak,
yeah.
and then the second one has come through, and a lot of old people are falling over.
Dude, we're getting it hard. It's pretty rough here. In fact, have you had that instance where you've been out and you're pretty sure someone may have it. You're like in your head, you're like, ugh. Oh, like I went to my accountant's today, and the receptionist, she coughed a few times, and that doesn't bother me, whatever. But she was shaking, like she was shivering, and I'm like, that means you got a fever, you motherfucker, go away. You
Oh
should have
wait, yeah, no,
stayed
I would.
home.
Well, and apparently, I was going to drop by and see you today, but so I guess I've had like two cavities this year. It's been my first cavities in my life, by the way, at 44, and they weren't bad, but I cracked a tooth with a gobstopper during Halloween. So I've been like I'm like a regular at the dentist. They're like, "Oh, hey, what's up, man?" They know me by name now. I'm like, this is not good, man. I'm breaking down.
You're breaking down. Yeah, no, I've had some today, honestly. I've had two run-ins with people that I was like, "Oh, you should not be out." Like one of the first people outside of my accountant's receptionist that I had to deal with at work. One of my first like customers. Yeah, they were coughing a lot and they looked sweaty. And for people who don't know, like today it was like 46 degrees, I think in our area. So if you're sweating and it's 46 degrees, something is wrong with you. Like,
Yeah, if you're not wearing a flannel and look like you just got done chopping wood, it's probably not a good thing.
not at all. And I was just like, get the hell out of my store. Like, why are you here?
Yeah, and the stores are packed too, like grocery stores and stuff. People getting ready for the old Thanksgiving, which
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm not going to be doing anything, which kind of sucks. But we're going to be just cooking here at the Kizzy and doing like a big uh, cured ham and mashed potatoes and stuffing and yams and all those good things. But or sweet potatoes, whichever way you refer to tomatoes, tomatoes, and it's gonna, which is fine. But just wait till these two holidays are going to be interesting to see. Like, and I have no doubt, especially the airports are also packed. By the
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
how many people are also going to spread it around themselves and their families, just like it's going to happen.
So and I actually wanted to talk about this at the second half of the show, but since we're talking about it now, it's cool. Um, but uh, yeah, this is one of those things where it's like, we have a lot of good news on COVID. We got what three different companies who have now put out vaccinations with the lowest, um, yeah,
The lowest
ex
success rate being a 70%er.
yes, thank you. And we have Regeneron has said that they're making that antibody treatment available to the public. And now on that one, I want people to know that like that seems like a really good thing, and it's awesome, and sure, it's fantastic. Number one, if you don't have really good health care, that's not going to be free. You understand that? That's going to be really expensive. But another thing is Regeneron themselves said that by the end of the year they should have 200,000 um, vials ready. 200,000. Now this is for mild people. This and teetering on the severe. This is to keep you from being severe. Um, but that's not good. 200,000 We have like
Yeah.
12, 13 million cases. Like, and then they said after that they're going to make about 2 million per year. Which there again, that's not enough. Like, I almost think that this is kind of a worthless endeavor. And I hate to say that, but it's like we should have, I mean, by early spring, most of us should be able to get the vaccination. Why are we going to need this Regeneron medicine? Like, especially if they're ramping up for 2 million per year. We're not really going to need it.
They'll just cash in on the fact that a lot of people who start to get really sick want to just grab at anything, and if their insurance doesn't cover it, they may just pay the $5,000 or some crap for the individual treatment just out of paranoia.
Well,
I mean, people.
here's what I'm concerned about is like, are we funding this? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, and look, it's not
I'm
a
I'm
good
sure all
time,
of these companies are getting some funding in one way or another.
and it's not a good time in general to worry about the need that could cost, you know, 100, 200 million dollars on something that is just too little too late, essentially. Like, if you want to make a small batch for people, cool, go ahead. But we're not going to need 2 million next year. Um, most people should have the vaccine, but, and like you were saying though, to kind of move off of the good stuff, the good points, we're in like the final stretch. And it seems like now people are even less likely. I know a lot of common sense, smart people who are like, I'm going to Thanksgiving. We're traveling. I've seen the risks. I'm willing to accept the risks and whatever. And they're, you know what, they're probably fine. Maybe you might kill your grandma, whatever. She's probably old. She had it coming.
This has got my money anyway or something.
Right? Yeah, I know exactly. But here's the problem. Hospitals are overflowing with people, and I actually read something that, it was an article um, in The Intercept that was an interview with the chief of medicine in Dallas, Texas, and they had a person die of a simple heart attack in the waiting room because they had no
Yeah.
room for anybody. And the doctor said in there, he's like, this would have been something we would have been able to treat easily. This man would have been alive. In fact, he was like 46, and he had what they consider a pretty low-grade heart attack, but he had to wait for 9 hours, and probably more, because about 9 hours he died.
So the
um,
moral of the story is get your own set of paddles and make sure they're charged. And if you need stitches, bust out the fishing line because bitch, you ain't getting in.
and don't drive, and don't, because that's the biggest fear right now from a lot of medical professionals is, okay, it's heart disease, strokes, and car accidents. They're like, if there's a big car accident, we won't know what to do with people. And understand
There's
this
a
too.
pile up on I-40. We got 42 patients. Well,
Well, just leave
sorry.
them there. I mean, in Texas, for instance, the National Guard is helping inmates move bodies. Like, that's how much people are piling up. Like, the National Guard is literally moving dead bodies. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is the rate low? If you got it, if I got it, would we be fine? Probably. I mean, we don't know about the after effects, and maybe there are none. Maybe there's a lot. Maybe they're pretty severe. Who knows? But why risk it? Especially when we're almost done. Like, that light, it's there. We see it.
What bothers me the most is watching television and seeing that same campaign associated with anti-smoking have the anti-vaping ads that, like, we're not sure, but you could be inhaling toxic metals
Yeah.
with the giant, like, lizard monster made of like liquid metal that jumps into
Yes.
some guy's lungs. I'm just like, oh my God, you know what? Shut up and take the vaccine.
That's part of it too. I would like, when you talk to people and you talk about like the vaping epidemic. Um, The opioid
Oh
cri
yeah,
the
the
opioid
epidemic.
crisis. Yeah, I know. No, I know. This isn't my words. These are what, people have said and media has portrayed, and it's a big thing. I mean, seriously, I bet you the average person you talk to about vaping, they're like, "Oh, I've heard it's bad, it's dangerous." 52 people died of vaping in inappropriate liquid. It wasn't even vape liquid. It was THC liquid from China.
Well,
52
there
though.
was a company in California
Yeah, okay,
that was
fair
kind of
enough.
going out of business, and they were cooking up bad vape, which had the vitamin E acetate in it. And by the way, you don't heat vitamin E acetate up because it changes to a toxic chemical when it's done. And so, and of course China, but basically a lot of that, those little shiny packages that were carts for the little vaping, things you buy at the convenience store, those were passed on to like low grade drug dealers. And they were basically passing around poisonous little vape carts as THC carts to stupid ass children who are, can't, or probably not old enough to go buy them at the store,
Well,
or
and
people
and,
who
and
don't have
adults too.
access.
There was a number of adults who were just like,
Oh yeah.
I mean, and the thing, what blew my mind about that situation is I thought, this is when they're going after marijuana. They didn't. They're like, no, this is all vaping. And it's like, what? No, none of this was vaping. This was all THC
Oh, my
smoke.
mom was
And by the way,
panicking because my mom introduced me to vaping like a decade ago, and I told her over and over, Mom, this is. I tried to explain to her what this was. I said when they bust these people that are hoarding boxes and boxes and boxes of these vitamin E acetate carts, I said when they bust them, it'll stop. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
she was thinking, oh no, I killed my baby.
Well, I didn't mean to get you on. I know you stopped. And by the way, I've been cigarette free for over a decade, and I went
Which is
straight to
amazing.
vape.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, now I
But
didn't
no,
go to
but
vape that didn't have nicotine in it, but because I wanted my damn nicotine.
right, right. And at low levels, it actually can be pretty beneficial. But again, we're talking 52 people died. And by the way, I would think that number would have been higher considering all that. But that 52 people. Now let's go to the opioid crisis, which
Yeah, that's like
everyone,
one really bad rave party with a bunch of bad
right?
X going around. That'd kill that many people. Shit.
No, exactly. The opioid crisis. That's another one. Oh my God,
Yeah.
this is a crisis. 40,000 people a year die of that. I mean, look, I'm not trying. When it's all said and done, we do the post mortem of COVID, of people overstating how bad the flu is. Maybe we need to talk about the opioid crisis. If people are saying 30,000, 40,000 isn't that much to die from, because remember when COVID first hit, they're like, see, yeah, 30,000, that's not much. So then why are we spending millions and billions of dollars fighting the opioid crisis? Doesn't seem like that big of a number to me. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Like, if you're not going to freak out about the flu, if you're not going to get a flu shot, for instance, and you're then
Yeah.
going to talk about how bad the opioid crisis is, that
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely fallen to the back burner. Probably not monetarily, but you know, it, I don't understand how. I mean, I do understand how a lot of people get addicted to that stuff, but
it's
I,
delicious.
they let them get away with it for the longest time ever. I mean, all you got to do is go to YouTube and watch the old OxyContin commercials.
Oh yeah.
Like they'll let you know right there that they were like, live a pain-free life and happiness and calmness and
Oh, and
la la la,
it
no
is. I
no
mean, it is.
addiction.
It is like a hug from God. I mean, it is a warm hug from God that makes your life amazing. I'm not gonna. And by the way, I just want to say, I'm not saying we shouldn't combat the opioid crisis. No, I think we totally should. I just think that we should be more when we're talking about numbers and people talking about COVID and saying, well, there's not that many deaths. Yeah, there is. That's what I'm that's ultimately what I'm saying. And I definitely think that we should be going after these pharmaceutical companies who pushed, OxyContin, who pushed,
So it's just
Vicodin.
like big tobacco. They always knew it caused cancer.
Yeah, yeah.
It was never a question. They were just like, yeah, but Senator, why don't we concentrate on other things? I mean, look, we got this great stuff called lead in gasoline.
Senator, the most important thing that we should talk about is if you don't want to go to war, we think you're gay. Are you
Yeah.
gay?
Well, I've never heard such a thing.
What? Me? No, I'm
Give me
not
a
gay.
cigarette.
Let's go to war. I'm gonna light a cigarette and on a declaration of war. Yeah,
Well,
no.
we'll get back to the. I assume once the COVID thing has kind of run its course, I think these things will come back into perspective. Like, oh yeah, now that people aren't dying from that as much, we can get back to the other pile of things that are killing people unnecessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should, but I also think like there's gonna be a part of me, especially when it comes to, and I hate to say it, but a lot of Republican senators and people like that when they talk about how bad certain things are, I'm gonna go, screw you, because you said COVID wasn't a big deal. You said more people die of the flu. That's a bigger concern. Like, yet you want billions of dollars for, you know, whatever, new pandemic they're gonna lead on to, and
And didn't Biden's team just make John Kerry? Uh,
I'm going to get, that's my piece for today's,
oh, it is, because I was
yes.
laughing at that too. I was like, "What the hell? What it did? The one guy." I've been so expected. Like it's not even surprising.
No, and I'm not even really going to talk about him, but no, I guess to wrap it up, all I'm saying is if you, I know everyone is getting so tired of having to be indoors. There's only so many people like me and Meg White who are true hermits and love being inside. And people, so if you don't know who Meg White is, she's the drummer of the White Stripes, and basically she has not shown her face in like 5 years. But real obscure reference, I
Yeah,
get.
and
But
my outside is fishing alone where nobody's around me, and I'm just damn happy with that.
and I get like people need, kids need interaction. Like all this does need to happen. All I'm saying is just hold on, just a couple more months, and on the backside, you know let's talk about small business real quick and talk about the fact that if we didn't have these spikes and these bursts of COVID come on the scene, we wouldn't have to do these lockdowns and stuff. I'm not in favor of the lockdowns, but I also look, what do you do? If you're a governor, what's your options? I would love to say, look, this is what you should do. And like for instance, if I had any sort of power, I would say, hey, look at this section. And by the way, I hate to say this because I'm not a fan, and my next piece is going to talk about how much of a fan I'm not of. But even Joe Biden said this is how they should be handling it: is hey, we're having a lot of COVID outbreak here, so we should move to curbside. Small businesses and large businesses as well should only do curbside or online or pickup kind of over the phone kind of orders, and I think that's fine. And I think that works. But, there's so many places, and it's not just blue places. There's some red places as well that are just like completely locking down. Nope, everything's closed. And, if we were going to do that, that's fine if we decided to, actually have the government take care of the things that the government should, like a UBI. And honestly, that's the way it should be handled, but that's not what's going to
I mean, I
happen.
wouldn't even mind if small businesses they made those temperature wrist things like gave them to everybody, or they cost like $50 or something, and check people at the door. I mean, just a simple screening like that could,
Let me tell
you
you
know,
why I don't like that idea. As a small business owner, I get enough shit from people with masks. I'm like, can I have you put on a mask? I'll be honest, I've had about 10 situations where, like, two of them almost got violent. I had another three people tell me they're never going to come back to my store again. you know, and then the other five were just like, well, screw you. So I can't imagine like if they feel like me saying, can you put a mask on is a breach of their, their freedoms. I can't imagine how they'd feel about, hey, I need to check your temperature. You know what I'm saying? Like
Well,
in a
if
perfect
it's a
world, you're
breach of their
right.
freedoms, then apparently they don't understand the freedoms that what a private business has to enforce their policy.
No, not at
So,
all. Of course
you
not.
don't have to come here. Do you really want those people to come back anyway? They'll probably try to return something that they chewed up and used in their dog shit out.
Right?
So, I'm just saying, if it's something that you need that seems like a pretty small sacrifice, it's not like you're even going into a place where your friends may see you, you know, breaking down for the man to put on a mask. I
I
mean,
know. It's so stupid. I mean, but and again, like we should be doing it the right way, which is stimulus. A lot of stimulus. We need that right now. This country really, really needs that. And, I just saw Steve Mnuchin say he's not going to extend anything. So, December 31st, there's going to be a lot of new homeless people. There is going to be another 15 million on top of the 30 million. So 45 million Americans in total who are starving, who are food insecure, as they call it. I mean, we've seen these food lines in like Austin. I think that was one of the big ones. No, not Austin, Houston, that people are
yeah, and that
referencing.
was and that was also associated with the hurricanes that have also always hit Houston. Those have all and they've already decimated all their,
Yeah.
you know, because Houston has to pass out tons of stuff like that normally. And by the way, for those of you who think that the hurricane season is just out of control, it's not. This is completely it's standard year. Hurricanes and fires and all that kind of stuff are completely within the norm of how many fires happen. But it makes it a lot worse when
Well,
there's
we've had
obviously a pandemic.
we've actually had more tropical storms than we've had. It's been a real high year for that. But you're right, it makes it
Yeah,
worse. And then Philadelphia, I mean, you can actually look these pictures up of big cities and these just like huge lines for people to get food. And here's the thing.
what did I see the other day that was like and I saw it once at the beginning of the pandemic where they had like, if I remember correctly, it was like 2 miles of people
yeah.
lined up for something, and recently there was something that in a similar vein, but it was for food. It was for food lines.
And here's how you fix it. Here's how we should have fixed it. A goddamn check. A UBI, a universal basic income. If you're gonna shut the country down, which some argue is the right thing, some argue it's the wrong thing. Either way, it's the direction that they kind of went with. Then we should have government stimulus. That's just the way it works. Like we wouldn't have all of these problems. We wouldn't have these protests. We wouldn't have so many people angry. We wouldn't have small business people going out of business. 440,000 small businesses going out. We wouldn't
Yeah,
have
I'm
that.
sure there's not anybody in the United States that can't get in their car and like just drive a few blocks around in a non-residential and just see closed, closed,
Yeah,
closed,
yeah.
closed, closed. And they're not just closed because it's 8 p.m. They're closed because they're closed permanently.
And the thing we've had a conversation with too, and why stimulus is so important, is even if there is no lockdowns, uh, consumerism has like in-person consumerism has dropped 62%, meaning
Yeah,
that if you own a small business, you're getting 62% less traffic, even if you're wide open. It's just because people are like, I don't want to get COVID. It's not worth it. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm in a certain business that tends to get a lot of repeat customers, and yeah,
well, you also have a monopoly here in town
that
just
too.
because the other places were kind of shady, so they disappeared.
So yeah, no, this isn't on behalf of me. This is on behalf of a lot of small businesses who are really hurting, and that's the thing. Government stimulus in this situation it was the appropriate thing to do, and it should have been something that we're still talking about, but we're not. We're completely not talking about, and that's honestly too something I worry about with COVID. The numbers are going to be spiking. Things are going to be going crazy, and oh, by the way, around half of us are going to be in poverty in early January. like major poverty, and the government's doing nothing. It's, I mean, we really are a failed state right now. That's tremendously scary.
Yeah, and I heard something else the other day that was saying, or I read something talking about how the IRS is backlogged like so many. I can't remember if it was around 10 or 5 million or whatever, but it was like tens of millions of applications for not only stimuluses that weren't collected or misfiled or something the first time,
Hmm.
but when it comes time very shortly for you to do your taxes again, that they could be like really really stalled, and that's another thing because people are going to want their,
Their tax
especially
refund,
people
yeah.
how many right out of work and people have made a lot less, and so they're going to get more back, and that's it, the IRS is handling their normal load of that, plus, doing the stimulus thing, and that they're basically overwhelmed, and that's not a good deal either.
And we've talked about it, and I've even said one of the worst things that the left ran on, and I don't even think many people ran on it, um, but it was associated with the left, was defund the police. But nobody on the left was talking nearly as much about defunding the police as what's actually happening, as what our government currently is doing is defunding the police in reality. Not just a reform, not just a blah 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 blah. No, we're going if we don't get a stimulus, these states are broke. What do you think is going to happen to the police, to the fire department, to the EMTs? They're not going to have jobs. I mean, there's a lot of places, New York City for one, they have National Guard on speed dial because they might have to be their trash men. Like,
Yeah, and New York's tax collection is going to go through the floor because there has been an exodus of the richest 1.1%. All the rich people have left
they
New
went
York
to the
City. They're
Hamptons.
gone.
They went to the yeah. They went to their rich areas. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, there's nobody there to tax. And so, and their budgets are set on taxing a lot of those rich people. Some of them, they're not all just like giant business owners. And I mean, they pay their taxes, and believe it or not, that's what New York runs on.
Oh
Because New
yeah.
York has a percentage of super rich people. You try to go get an apartment in Manhattan, you'll be lucky if you can get one for $5,000 a month, and it'll be a shithole. So I mean, there are
No,
some
but
extremely rich people in New York, and they're gone.
check this out though, because New York's taxes have not only paid for New York, but they've paid for South Carolina, Kentucky, um, many of the southern states under them.
Yeah, I
California
don't.
has paid for
Yeah,
Montana, Wyoming, um, Nevada, Arizona, like in all these big meccas. And a lot of people, because here's one thing we talk about when we talk about like the stimulus package. People are like, well, red state shouldn't have to bail out blue state. That's never happened and never will happen. Okay, the 15 like the 15 lowest states that rely on government money, 13 of them are red states. Okay, so like Kansas, like where we're at, we're like negative. The government is always bailing us out. Like every year, they're
yeah.
like,
Thanks to our wonderful brown back ass stain governor who
oh, he was
raped
great.
our state.
He was
Yeah, and
great.
twice in a row, and I cannot believe he got reelected. Honestly, even the Republican uh, Supreme Court and the Republican Senate and the local all the local
Hated him.
Republicans wanted him gone,
Yes, because of what he was
and the
doing.
people elected him.
You're
Oh
right.
my God.
And you're so right because of what he was doing. I mean, he ran our state to shit, and a lot of them are like that. So,
Over 600, over $750 million, and that right before that was in negative. So they took money from education, from blah 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 blah, and then it was like, oh, I won't do that again. And then yeah, he did. They did it again.
all to give the
Yeah,
Koch brothers tax breaks. But yeah, so I
yeah,
mean, we're looking at this huge financial collapse if the government doesn't step up and do stimulus packages. That's what they need to do right now. But anyway, on to my thing. So I've always thought when I was looking about this next election, what's the thing I fear the most? And there's a lot, don't get me wrong. But without Trump, I fear like people won't pay attention anymore. One of my things I loved about Donald Trump was that people actually paid attention. People got involved in Steve Miller and Steve Mnuchin. They knew who the Secretary of Defense was and what their policies were. They knew about the Secretary of State and how they were acting with the foreign countries. Would it be the foreign allies or enemies? And all of this was due towards, honestly, an either hatred or a love of Donald Trump. And I think that so many reasons why we had Donald Trump is because we didn't pay attention before. We didn't call out the people that we should have been. We kind of let the prisoners run the prison, so to speak. And yes, I'm referring to Bush and Obama and Clinton. And what we're seeing already, and we will find out tomorrow, by the way, if this happens, but we're starting to see Joe Biden's cabinet. And I'm afraid that at best case scenario, people are not going to care. At the worst case scenario, they're going to cheer these appointees on. Now, we're only going to get a few people. The big one that everyone's already talked about is the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Now, Antony Blinken is someone you probably have not heard of and don't know too much about, and I wouldn't fault you for that. But Antony Blinken, what he's best known for is being an Obama Clinton crony, who, when 2016 happened, Blinken went catatonic and decided that he was going to leave politics, quote unquote. He joined up with Michelle Flournoy, and they created a venture capitalist firm that, just say, they used their special networking to get other businessmen an in with another country, and that country being China. They used a lot of their political power to influence China, to help you if you got a business you're trying to go international with. Well, they have a gateway into China. They deal with China a lot. They are the best friends, let's say, of the Chinese economy. And this is who Antony Blinken is. This is what his firm represented, was this gateway to China. And, you know, selling our jobs overseas. And this is going to be the Secretary of State. This is the guy. And I fear that people are not going to point this out. They're not going to talk about the fact that Antony Blinken, aside from his obvious connections to the Chinese government, and favorable ones at that his other big move was convincing Barack Obama that we needed to bomb Syria, that we needed to get involved in a proxy war with Syria, where we, yes, not only helped facilitate ISIS, but we created a terrorist mecca in Syria, all in turn to throw it over for oil, for power. Who knows why?
Because we wanted to block the Russians from having access to a pipeline.
That was part of it. Yeah. And then let's be honest, Barack Obama's rich deep state friends and his,
and Hillary Clinton. She was directly involved with that too.
Yes, their defense contractor friends needed more money, so let's throw them billions and billions of dollars by fighting a war that doesn't need to happen, and lying about Assad. To be honest, yes, I am one of those people who thinks that Assad didn't do a lot of those things.
Oh no, he absolutely didn't do. There was zero proof that he used gas weapons on any of those people. That was the only, like I say atheist, but it was an only non-denominational state in the entire region. In other words, that was a place up until the Syrian conflict where, at least for the most part, the Christians and the Muslims in Syria. By the way, there was a very large population of Christians and Muslims living side by side. But when we started arming the terrorists, we gave the terrorists and ISIS and the rest of them. I don't know if anybody remembers what ISIS does to even archaeological sites. They blew them up in Iran and all over the Middle East. They went in and blew up 4,000-year-old monuments because they were, no other gods but Allah. So some of the most historical things, huge Buddhist stuff, huge, they just blew them up with tanks. And so blowing up some Christians now that they've been given control by our weapons was just wonderful. Thanks. Appreciate that. Destabilized the only place in the Middle East that didn't have a problem.
And whose idea was it to turn Syria into this terrorist mecca and to arm ISIS with weapons? It was Anthony Blinken, this guy who's going to be Secretary of State. And again, is anyone going to pay attention? Are we going to know? I hope so. I hope people are still addicted to the crack that is politics and they're ready to be on the offensive, but I doubt it. I really don't think so. Why? Because Anthony Blinken doesn't have bad tweets. He doesn't womanize. He's quote unquote a decent guy. But this is what he does behind the scenes. And by the way, he's only one of the many pieces that Biden is collecting to get us back to this elitist, pro-war, anti-deficit, government that got us into some of the worst situations that we've been in. For instance, with the economy, with jobs and things of that nature. This is all them in war. I mean, a lot of people forget under Obama, when Obama got in office, we were at war with 2 countries. Now we're at war with 9 countries. That was all under Obama, and that mechanism keeps growing and getting bigger and harder to stop. Donald Trump once said that he was just going to pull out of Afghanistan because screw the deep state. Chuck Schumer, in what I believe was a friendly word of advice to Donald, he said, Mr. Trump might really want to think about what he's doing because when you mess with the deep state, they always find a way to get you. And again, I don't think Schumer was threatening. I think he was warning Trump about that. Because you can't.
All you need to see is go back and see Eisenhower's resignation speech when he left office, where he specifically warns that he's worried that the United States is no longer in control by the people, but control. And he said specifically the military-industrial complex. It goes back that far to Eisenhower's resignation. A president warned us, you're losing control of your country, and it has gone to the military-industrial complex. And we're not talking about the Army, Navy, Air Force. We're talking about the people who make weapons and sell weapons.
And
we're just a purchaser of those weapons.
To a good place, which would be the Secretary of Defense. Who could that be? Who might be Joe Biden's Secretary of Defense? Now, there's a few names. Laird Branagh is one. But most likely the one that will get it is Michelle Flournoy. And if you say, wait, that name sounds familiar. Yes, because she's the one who started that firm with Anthony Blinken to create that gateway for businessmen to China. She is just another one of those K Street lobbyists. But she's worse than that. Why? Because she was one of the few people who was against the Iran deal. She was also against any sort of talks of a treaty with North Korea. She told Obama, quote unquote, I think that the more troops that we can send to the Middle East, the safer America will get. This is who is going to be our defense secretary. And by the way, there's going to be a lot of people go, oh my God, but she's a woman. Well, that's diversity. We're growing. That's progressivism. That's not progressivism.
Yeah, if you think women are less warlike than men, you are on crack. You obviously have never been married, and And you don't know women. They are just as aggressive and warlike when put into the same positions.
Of course,
There are not those kind of differences between men and women.
because
So
there's people.
don't assume that.
They're people, but even more so, they're going to say how progressive, and it's not progressive. Progressive is not going to war. That's being progressive. Somebody like Nina Turner as our defense secretary, that would be fucking progressive. That might be a little insane, but that would be progressive. But Michelle Flournoy is a K Street lobbyist embedded in the thick of the swamp. In fact, the swamp probably comes oozing from her, and it's hard to
Yeah, I was
believe
about to
when you
say.
see her because you're like, I think she might need help. Like, people might have to help her tie her shoes. She doesn't look very intimidating at all, but to know what her connections are, what she's done, who owes her, and who she owns. Well, that's part of why she is gonna be one of the top members of Joe Biden's team. And again, these are just two people, and these are two people who were pretty much easy to do any research on because they work together in a lot of other really damning projects.
I think people have underestimated China for years now. Militarily, sure, they're not. I mean, they're not a threat to us with planes, bombs, and automobiles and blah, blah, blah. But that's not how wars are fought. And that's not how China intends to fight war. They intend to fight war economically and on the tech market. And they have no scruples whatsoever, and they can control information outflow and inflow way better than we do. And they do it with a fist and a gun at the civilians' heads. And
I mean, Joe Biden said at the very beginning of his campaign, way back in 2019, he started his whole campaign with, "Why you think China's a problem? Come on, man, China's not a problem."
oh yeah,
And it just deaf ears. And why? Because America is what they do very well. What we do very well is we take resources, we take minerals, and we take labor from other countries. That's how we are quote unquote number one. We take them and we screw people. Venezuela, for instance. Venezuela gets often thrown as like this just horrible country that just horrible people, and it's their fault that they're in the situation they're in, but they're not. You should look into sanctions. You should look into why their country is
I
economically
don't think anybody
collapsing.
blames the people.
A lot
Like
of
I know
people
the people of Iran
a
are
lot of
not like, you know.
well, a lot of people blame the socialism in Venezuela, and the Venezuelans are socialists. But it's not that. It's the sanctions. It's the fact that we came in and took Citgo from them, which was one of their best economic sources that they had. We actually just took it. We said, no, you can't have it anymore. We took it. And we gave it to England for God knows what. I still have no idea, but we're all part of the same unit. England.
Well, they have to have
Yeah,
something to fund the royal family. I mean, come on.
yeah, no, you're right. They had to have something for that big, wedding between Kate and whoever else that was. Yeah, no, we just took it. That's why Venezuela's in such a bad situation because that's what we do is we go into other countries and we take. Now, I think Joe Biden and his elitist Dems, I think they believe that we're taking labor from China because we're forcing, quote unquote, forcing their workers to do much more than the average American would do for the money. We're getting cheap labor from there. And I think that's where they think, hey, we're winning this battle. Why would we be against that? And if you're, one of the big cogs and you mass produce, I don't know, poop scrapers, yeah, why would you pay an American $12 to do it when you can pay a Chinese dude 25 cents? Or better yet, you can get that sweet, sweet slave labor that they have with the Muslims and you don't
Yeah,
pay
well, and
anything.
for this and the children. I personally love
And
children making my clothes
yes, yes. I mean, that's right. That's the sweet spot.
because we all don't have enough clothes, especially because I even had a cousin who was a worthless piece of crap, and I can't exactly say which department she worked for, what university she was eventually fired from, but she would fill up her house. She would go buy new clothes, and instead of washing them, I walked through their house a few times where the clothes where they had a working washer and dryer were piled up to the ceiling, because she was so lazy. She would just go buy new clothes instead of washing her own clothes, she didn't have money that month for a maid to come in.
And actually,
she was not rich. She was lazy.
Hassan Minhaj, he did a Patriot Act, which was a great show. He actually did a piece on clothing, and it was eye-opening. Like how many tons of clothes get shipped around the world and then eventually burned, and then we just make more, and it's just cheap. I mean, it's just. But yeah, I mean, but why would you, if you're Joe Biden and your rich friends are like, dude, I want slave labor, literally slave labor, making my shit that I can sell at a premium to these dumb Americans, and I'm barely charging them shit, but I want to get it for free and just make money on the back end. I don't want to worry about HR. I don't want to worry about 401ks.
Yeah, it's too far down the line to really directly connect it. I want my iPhone. Okay, yeah. Well, you just basically supported just unbelievable amounts of slave labor, and granted, it's hard to find some form of technology that doesn't have a dip in China. But if you want to discriminate, you can look up these things and find out very quickly how much of one thing is assembled, produced, manufactured. And there's, I can't remember what is it like? It's a Human Rights Watch group, does really good work, finding out where the products are made, how much is made in China, and they'll tell you. It's like a pair of Nikes. It probably costs about $5 to $12 to produce a pair of Nikes, and 12 meaning like they're most expensive. Well, how much is a pair of LeBrons?
Yeah,
a couple $100.
I was gonna say, if it's one of the new ones, if it's something hot that's coming out, yeah, you're paying $200-300. And by the way, you're probably happy to pay that. Like they could go up to $500 to $700 depending on
Yeah, like the rarity in the eBay market.
Yeah.
And people there, of course, if you own YouTube, you've probably accidentally clicked on some dude who has a YouTube channel just associated with shoe collecting and has a wall of boxes of Nikes behind him.
And by the way, I love shoes. Like I love Nikes. I think but I stopped buying them because once I found out, I was like, nah, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna do the best I can. But again, if you own a big business and you can get slave labor, don't have to pay 401k, don't have to worry about HR, don't want to worry about actually paying any wages except for some kind of promissory fee that you would pay to China's government. Why wouldn't you do that?
Especially it amazes me the hypocrisy of a lot of people, though. They'll go out and protest something, some form, and not that it's not real, about human rights or this and that, and yet they participate and purchase some of the biggest offenders, support with their own money, just some of the most horrible governments that, and not that we're involved with our companies doing that, because we are. Well, you don't have to support those people. You don't have to have, this or that, because the difference between an iPhone and, say, a phone made in South Korea, may be quite a bit of difference of child labor and slave labor. I mean, it really may be. Even Taiwan and other countries that produce a lot of, and by the way, of course, China thinks Japan. They own Taiwan. And Japan doesn't really manufacture that much anymore, and they've outsourced a lot of things to China as well. But there are South Asian countries, like I said, like at least South Korea and Taiwan, that don't outsource a lot of. That's why China has always wanted to put a grip on Taiwan, is because just like Hong Kong for the longest time, they were extremely financially independent. And that was China's cash cow, basically. and Taiwan is going to be it's going to be contentious because China wants Taiwan. They've always said no, no, Taiwan's a part of China. They just deny it.
So
And
yeah, and if you so basically, yeah, if you want more of this slave labor, the Uyghur made or child labor produced items, well, that's where we got Anthony Blinken and Michelle Flournoy. Now, hopefully, like I said, hopefully I'm wrong. I've been wrong politically a lot this year, at least a few times. Polling being one of the big ones. But, you know, maybe people have come around. Maybe people are like, I need to focus in on what these people are doing now. I went in hard with the camps and the cages at the southern border. I went in hard with all these other human rights things. I need to continue that. And I hope they are. I mean, look, I didn't just find out this stuff because I researched it on my own. I learned about it from other progressive groups. I learned about it from other people. A lot of people probably don't even know this stuff happens or how bad it really is. Because let's be honest, it's much easier to turn on Keeping On with the Kardashians than it is to actually watch documentaries about the Uyghur camps and child labor and who exploits them.
and
Hopefully.
it's I think it's a very noble thing, and I mean noble as in as long as you're not a millennial playing the game that you have to look and act the part and own the pieces of technology that keep you in the cool. It's just as cool to reject that stuff and go, I'm not gonna, you know,
It's
if
a
you want to
hipster.
be arrogant about something, egotistical, say I'm not paying money to those piece of shit companies who support all this stuff, and I'm not going to, vote for politicians that actively encourage these things to be, made in these countries. I mean, who's going to say something about that?
And
That's
I
kind of a nonpartisan issue.
Well, you'll have somebody like Bill Maher or Greg Gutfeld who will bash them and call them idealistic hipsters. And yeah, that's where. But no,
Well, if
but you're
that's the
right. You're right.
ideals that those hipsters have, I think those are pretty good ideals to have,
I agree.
and 'cause those things trickle down, and if enough people go, you know what, f that, f supporting that kind of stuff, then they can have an effect on it. Just spit at that crap. There's no reason you don't need it. We all have so much stuff these days. I
We
mean,
do.
it's almost you can be a hoarder without even trying and spending a lot of money. That's how easy it is to have too much. And so I'm not telling you to get rid of your house and you know not
Unless it
because
was like
I'm like
child.
Sanford and Son at my house.
You have
So
you have homes that were made by Uyghurs. The Chinese shipped them over here. They shipped a bunch of children and Uyghurs to build your house.
and yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would go for that too. And it's like, well,
They probably
they're
would.
just small people. They're Chinese are just small people. They look like they're 8. I don't understand.
No,
Yeah.
no, most Chinese they like juice boxes, don't they?
That's all they got for lunch. So we're wondering if maybe peanut butter and jelly would be a little bit more appropriate for
Oh,
that. Yeah.
two of my child laborers are fighting over their Happy Meal toy.
Yeah, and that's the worst one of those toys. I don't even think that one's collectible. God.
That was not a Barbie. I don't know what that. No, I mean, but that's the thing, and that's why I hope people stay focused in. I hope people still stay as sharp as they are. It's hard for me to follow them, the masses, because I don't really, like Twitter or anything like that. I'm pretty deep in on the progressive side of things, and this is all that they've talked about for forever. In fact, the Donald Trump years didn't change very much on progressive Twitter. It was like, yeah, we're still doing this, this, and this, and that. And, one thing that was brought up to me most recently, and I think it was the Gray Zone that did a piece on this. And in fact, if anyone knows who Roger Waters is, which some of you may, most of you probably won't, he was the bass player and lead singer of Pink Floyd. He was actually talking about this phenomena that could happen very soon, and that Biden could be one of the big, let's just say, architects of this plan, or maybe a person who follows through with it, where we might see more of this slave labor happen in Israel. And no one's going to say anything about it, because if you say anything against Israel, well, you're anti-Semitic. But there's thoughts and rumors and beliefs that there are camps with a lot of Palestinians in them, and we're talking about manufacturing becoming a big thing in Israel. Where do you think that comes from? How do you think that's levied? We'll find out if that gets worse. But I wouldn't be surprised. I really, really wouldn't be surprised if that was just another step in the globalists and what they're actually doing. A lot of people want to believe that it's vaccines and cell phones and 5G. It's not, okay? It's this. It's this. The same shit they've been doing for decades, but they're just doing it uh, at a higher level and more. They're working together at a much better rate than what we thought, you know.
And
So
let's also remember that these same people, these globalists, control all the media that you see. So if a
yeah,
story
yeah.
doesn't suit them, they just crush it. It's the Harvey Weinstein and not even Harvey Weinstein, but what's his face, Mr.
Epstein.
Sex Island. Yeah,
Epstein.
Epstein. That's a perfect example of a story directly connected to Hollywood elites that are still, for the most part, unscathed. And his whole, and the Clintons, they're riding on that sex plane,
Well, what's
and
even bigger, I think, is not even the fact that, you know, most of the people, then again, we don't have like a huge record, but a lot of these people who are being caught or suspected is people we've never heard of, but they control so much more than we're aware of.
well, there's a reason we've never heard of them. It's because they don't let their names cycle through the news.
People who have major positions in like J.P. Morgan and people like that. Those are
Yeah,
some of the
and the
biggest.
thing is, Weinstein was taking names. He was like
Epstein.
Scientology. They know
Epstein.
everything about you, and if you ever cross them, they'll try to crush you. And
Hmm.
that's what Epstein was really doing. I'm sure he was participating. Let's get real,
Oh yeah.
but he was running that camp basically, and that's why Ghislaine's book is so her diary or whatever her file. They've got that stuff, and I want to see some indictments and some prison sentences, and there needs to be a release. Maybe WikiLeaks can get that for us, because apparently we're not seeing it fast enough. I want to know who these people are, and I think they're afraid. They're afraid to put out these names, because these names are going to expose some of those no names that like you said. That's some cousin of the Rockefellers or some,
Yeah.
Russian oligarch that slipped, and they're going to have these
American
names of these
royalty. I
people.
think a lot of American
Oh yeah,
royalty.
and British. We already know British
Oh, we
royalty
already
is
know
directly
them.
involved.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean,
No,
if
and
you
in
haven't
fact, the
seen
other
those
thing.
interviews,
Oh, I was just gonna say the other thing. Like I was torn between talking points for my segment, and like I decided to go with this Joe Biden. Um, just how damning his administration is going to be, and the worst part of it being that people probably won't pay attention. They won't care. Uh, you know, but I was torn between that and then talking about like this really aggressive media thing that they do, especially in print media, where it's what it's called is a silent retraction. It's when they print up stories. In fact, the most recent one that I can think of was having to do with Russiagate, and you can search online, and they still have the original story that they put out, but
and
since
it's
that
completely bunked.
since that came out, they have put in print silent, what they consider silent retractors, because they're quick little, just like a side note. Oh, by the way, most of this information is not verified. And that's it. And you'll
Right,
see
and
nothing
that
else.
that's been a big point for some talking heads. Is that's not even new. Basically, they're preying on the click. They'll put out a story
Yeah.
that they knew was false from the beginning, and they get a billion clicks on it, and then after they've made their money, they issue a little tiny, a note at the bottom that says, well, we've found out that this is untrue and this is blah 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 blah. So you just clicked on something that made them a billion clicks and so many millions in advertising revenue on a story that they knew was untrue. But the problem is, nobody or almost nobody sees that they retracted it as false.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the the biggest, you know, the biggest perpetrators of this crime are the L.A. Times, the New York Times, the London Times, all these big papers that people assume are valid. But no, this is what they do. Like, and some of it too. I think it's kind of interesting. I hate to backtrack to Roger Waters and his thing, but he was talking about how the fact that we've part of why he thinks this has happened is because we took power away from radio. Follow me here. He's like, when we would have to promote anything, it would just be on the radio. He's like, but now you have to have a social media account, and all of these get so many clicks, so much attention. All of that is ran typically by, well, a guy who wanted to rate high school girls' looks and fucking Jack over at Twitter, who are all embedded with not only the media, but also the Pentagon. And those two kind of came together so that you only now have these two options: print media, you know, quote unquote print media, or social media. And those are the only two ways that you can really self promote anymore. And so it's become such a big place of the marketplace of ideas in that has gotten such a big, you know, uh, taken over the area that people don't even really promote on radio anymore. And he's talking about how like radio is too hard to control. You know, just your average disc jockey was too hard to control, and so that's why they just got rid of it essentially. And I don't know, I
Well,
thought
and
that
don't
was really
forget, we
interesting.
just saw in the last decade, we just saw analog, but of course, your old television, even though now they're digital, that's still over the radio. I mean, UHF, VHF, all those signals, including the police vans, the fire department, the sheriff, that used to be the communication lines, and the FCC, once people moved over to digital from analog, and of course digital being ones and zeros and analog is a waveform, and like old modems, they take a waveform and the TVs didn't have to use to do it, but the point is those things became unused, and the FCC tried to auction those blocks of empty radio space, this megahertz to this, megahertz, and nobody wanted them. So now we have tons of what used to be busy airwaves and radio wave airspace, and it's just dead air.
Huh.
And nobody buys it, nobody sells it. It's not open to the public. You can't broadcast on it.
Right.
If you
Yeah.
do broadcast on it, they can triangulate your position and come fine you $1 billion for a rogue radio station.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only way you can actually do it is actually by broadcasting off coast to what is considered pirate radio, which, by the way,
Wolfman Jack, baby, Wolfman Jack.
I would love to actually do that. But anyway, I think that's got to be it for us. This show is running a bit long, but um, yeah, no. Again, I just tomorrow we'll find out. But I guarantee you, at best, to bring it all around, at best, people are gonna not care about Anthony Blinken. They aren't gonna look into anything he's done, not look into his record. They'll celebrate it. We're back to normalcy. And that's when you
Yeah,
know that the future of America really is dead. I mean,
yeah. Normal. Going back to normal is not where we want to be, and it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. If you think going back to what the previous administrations have been doing, you are on the wrong block.
you are, yeah. And I mean, we'll see. There's so much to talk about, honestly, because I do think that there's a significant number of people who want to go back to it, but it's not the majority. Probably 30%, maybe 20% of the country wants to go back to the Obama Bush era politics because it worked well for them. But the majority of us, we don't. But we're
there's so many people who they don't have the time. They really don't. They don't have time to look into this stuff, or they think it's too depressing, or they believe it's fake because they'll see something on the New York Times site that says, "Oh no, don't trust, like Corbyn in London because he's an anti-Semite." But he was telling the horrors of what like Israel and China are doing. But no, no, he's an anti-Semite, so don't listen to him. And we'll find that again. Aaron Mate from the Gray Zone, one of the best journalists of our time. He has been denounced I don't know how many times on mainstream media. And so, yeah, if you're just an average person who doesn't know and you're looking into something and you see an Aaron Mate um, piece, you're gonna then cross-reference who Aaron Mate is, and you're gonna be like, oh no, this okay, apparently this guy's a liar and he's not even reputable. This is what they do. I mean, this is so it. A lot of people vote against their best interest or have the ideas against their best interest. Now, look, this last election, you're stuck between a turd sandwich and a douchebag. I mean, no, it didn't matter which way you go, but maybe next time when primaries come up, maybe next time when we have senators, we have the House seats, we have positions that need to be filled, maybe they'll say, no, I want to put somebody who actually represents me in that position. I hope. I really hope, but probably not. And that's really what going back to normal is for me. And that's what makes this Joe Biden administration and the next 4 years incredibly depressing. Is at least under Trump, people wanted to change. People were open to the idea of different changes that this country desperately needs, but they're not going to. They're pacified again. They're they got their opium that is democratic elitism. It's hey, let's focus on the problems and let's talk about racism and sexism, even though we're not going to actually do anything to help them. We're just going to point it out and say we have high morals because we care, but never do anything to actually help the American people in any sense of the form. And that's what's going to happen. I hope not, but I just feel like that is.
Free Julian Assange. Free Edward Snowden.
That's something too. We should. I don't know. Wednesday's going to be a fun show. I'm excited to see what we're going to talk about. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to talk about, but what you're just talking
Turkey.
right there, that might be something we talk about. Um, some good stuff coming up. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening, guys. We really, really appreciate you. You have a good day.